Good afternoon. I'm Steve Marks, Associate Dean and Director of Veterinary Medical Services at the College of Veterinary Medicine. It's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today in a continuing series, Race and Representation. And this is Mr. Fields Jackson. Mr. Jackson is president of the College Diversity Network and also executive director of the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable. He's a leader and has been recognized for as being a thought leader for diversity. He also is a founder of Racing Towards Diversity magazine, which presents topical issues really directed toward the business and education audiences. This is a passion for Mr. Jackson, and it's a passion that runs through his family. I'd like to recognize his son, Austin, who's a former student athlete and member of the Clemson National Championship football team, who also does work in this area. So please help me give a warm welcome to Mr. Fields Jackson.
Hello, Wolfpack. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr. Marks, for that introduction. I'm glad to meet with you guys today. My name is Fields Jackson, and I want to talk about the business case for diversity and the impact of HBCUs. So if I could start my slides. Again, my name is Fields Jackson, Race to Diversity magazine. Probably next slide. That's me, Fields Jackson. I tell everybody I've got a couple 9 to 5s, I guess. My 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm the founder and CEO of Racing Toward Diversity magazine. We've been in business about 15 years. We're an online publication. If you Google us, Racing Toward Diversity magazine, we offer we've got a free daily newspaper. We went all digital about 6 years ago. We used to print the magazine, but we went all digital about 6 years ago. And now we print a daily newspaper. It's actually free. So if you go to the website, Racing Toward Diversity magazine, you can see it'll pop up. Just need your name and email address, and you can get a free edition every day mailed to your email address. My other 9 to 5, my 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., I'm the executive director of the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable. I'm also the CEO of the College Diversity Network. So that's a little bit just about what I do on in my day jobs and my night jobs. But next slide. A little bit about Racing Toward Diversity. It actually about 20 plus years ago, I was a part owner of a NASCAR team. So talk about diversity. And I see Michael Jordan just jumped into the fray. So I'm happy to see that 20 years have passed, but I start to see some light at the end of the tunnel. But we went into racing so this is a great diversity story. Went into racing about 20 years ago. I had a couple partners. Next slide. We went in, there's a couple guys, probably, again, this the age of the group, I'm not sure, but I went in a couple partners. One gentleman's name was Joe Washington. Joe was from the Washington Redskins. He also was a running back at Oklahoma. And the other partner was a guy by the name of Julius Irving, and a lot of people call him Dr. J. We went into racing about 25 years ago. We were the first African-American team to actually go into racing since Wendell Scott. A lot of fanfare. Dr. Pepper was our sponsor. We ran for about 2.5, 3 years, lost a ton of money, but it was a great diversity experience. I mean, we got to meet a bunch of great people, Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt. What we found out was that it wasn't as easy. Again, everybody thinks you just get in the car and sort of, step on the gas, but there's talent. I mean, Jeff Gordon is Jeff Gordon because he's Jeff Gordon. So what we found is that, we ran around for about 3.5 years, lost a bunch of money, but again, it was a great diversity experience for me, which actually led to Racing Toward Diversity magazine. So that was sort of what, we started the magazine about diversity in the automotive space, Racing Toward Diversity, and it sort of grew to quite a few other areas. But that was the humble beginnings with my diversity journey. Next slide. If you're on any type of social media, I'm on it. So I'd love for you to connect. On Twitter at FleaJack, Race to Diversity. If you're on LinkedIn, please connect with me on LinkedIn. There's 3 Fields Jacksons that I know of on the planet. One is my dad had passed away, but he was senior. I'm junior, and there's Fields the third. So Fields the third is actually a graduate student going for his PhD. He's over in Israel now at Hebrew University. So he's been over there for about a year. And then there's another Fields Jackson. It's a white guy, and I actually met him. We were down in, I think it was Dallas or Houston, and I got a page. It was back when they used to page it over the airlines, and I got a page for Fields Jackson. So as you can imagine, I go down there, and there's 2 guys standing there, and a couple of my friends had, because Fields Jackson, how many Fields Jacksons are there? So I had a couple of friends down there. They said, "Hey, Fields, we found out you were in the airport," and I found out there was a white gentleman named Fields Jackson, great guy. But we actually showed up at the same terminal to get the page, and it wasn't for me; it was for him. So, but again, if you're on LinkedIn, please connect with me. I will connect with you on YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram. So any type of social media, please connect. Next slide. This is a couple of the magazines. This is back when we used to print the magazines. Again, we did quarterly editions. Print is a brutal business. We had great readership. We could track about 3.5 million folks, and that's when we started tracking on the digital version. But we had great readership. We would ship the magazine out, but with the advertisers, they were constantly asking me, "Well, Fields, are they reading the magazine?" Now, we could prove you got the magazine. We just couldn't prove you were reading the magazine. So, it took a while, and I'd say, "Well, I know he got the magazine. I don't know if his dog is reading the magazine, but I know he's got it." So we made a strategic decision to switch to all digital, which probably is the reason why we're still around today, because we had great content. An amazing thing happened about 6-7 years ago. You can see the likes, the shares, so you can actually see the people reading and sharing the information. So we have about 3.5 million visitors a year. We do a number of events. But again, Racing to Diversity, and our whole business premise is if you don't believe in diversity, it doesn't make you a bad person. But if you do believe in diversity, how can we talk about best practices and talk about supplier diversity, employee diversity? How do you get better in the world of diversity? Next slide. So Racing to Diversity, a little bit about us. Again, our concentration is driving strong, relevant content. Again, we're on all types of, reach about 3.5 million folks. And again, those are the channels that we hit. Next slide. Our demographics, we do a lot with women's groups that we talk to companies that are having difficulty finding women for boards. We work with groups called Sit at the Table, Women in the Boardroom. So we're pretty adept at finding talented folks for diverse situations. So we have a pretty strong partnerships with women's organizations. One of our biggest audiences is students like yourself, internships, early career, right out of college. We've got strong relationships with Hispanic organizations and influencers. And again, I'm an adjunct professor at Shaw University, right around the corner. Also at Chicago State, I guest lecture at a number of HBCUs. And again, about 3.5 years ago, I became involved with the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable. So we've got a very strong and close ties with the HBCU community. Next slide. The HBCUs, there's 111 HBCUs. I was not aware of that about 3.5 years ago. Again, when people mention HBCUs, you hear the same ones over: Howard, Morgan, Spelman. So you continue to hear the same ones. And I thought potentially it was 40 or 50. Come to find out, there's 111 HBCUs. And again, 83 of them have business schools. So the HBCU Business Deans represents the 83 business schools on the 111 HBCUs. It's in 22 states in the Virgin Islands, and it represents about 250,000 students. I came to know them, probably next slide. I came to know them with a couple of companies, and these are some of the strategic partners that we have, but One of my top companies about 4 years ago was having a tough time finding interns for a job. They needed about 100 interns, and this is about 4 years ago. So I thought maybe there was the difficulty was there was patent attorney or something like like what you guys are doing, veterinary science, but it was a sales and marketing job, and it was a huge company. I said, you got to be kidding me. They said, no, Mr. Jackson, we're having a difficult time finding diverse talent. So it was Austin's my youngest. He's a sophomore year. I said, well, if you only need 100, you only need 99 now, because Austin's mama will pack a lunch and he'll be there tomorrow. Well, they laughed, and so, but I was dead serious because I found Austin a job at a great company. So I said, send over the resume, and I said, I'll send it out. So I sent it off to a couple deans, not knowing they would send it off to a larger organization. 2 days later, they got over 200 resumes in 2 days. So I got a call from the company. I said, Mr. Jackson, this is incredible. How did you do this? And I was, it was such a large company. I was like, well, how come you can't? What happened was, it went out to the HBCU network. And if you can imagine, each one of the deans or the chancellors or the presidents sent over their best student. So they got 200 resumes from the valedictorians, the presidents of the class, and again, from universities they probably never heard of. So I said to the company, I said, well, I mean, you got any more jobs? They said, yeah. I said, well, send them over. So I just start sending out jobs to all these universities that typically wouldn't get opportunities from companies like this, if that makes sense. So I called a couple other companies and asked, hey, are you having a tough time? And as you can hear, especially if you see like Facebook, you see some of the guys in Silicon Valley, they're struggling. So I said, hey, we got these jobs, send them over to me. And so I'm sending them out. I'm sending out all these jobs to probably the 70 schools you never heard of. But these schools have great students. They've got great talent. They're in little small communities, but there's some really smart kids there. So after about a year of this, I think that the schools were wondering, well, who is this Fields guy that's sending us all these great jobs? And I'm just doing it. So I get a call from the HBCU Business Association. They said, Mr. Jackson, we can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And I actually said, well, thank you, because it's actually helping me find talent for these companies that are telling me they can't find it. So it's like a marriage made in heaven. And they said, well, we've been watching you, we're watching your website, and we believe you can help us raise our profile. And I said, well, who are you guys? And they said, we're HBCU Business Deans. How long you been around? So we've been around 20 years. And I said, wow, I had never heard of it. I said, well, you're like a secret organization? They said, no, we're not secret. We're just a bunch of deans, and we sit around and we talk about dean stuff. But we'd love to have you come in and raise our profile and get the word out about us. And we've got a executive director job that's opening up, and we'd love to have you come on a more official capacity, and we'll pay you. And I said, pay? I would do it for free. I'd still do it for free. But I said, yes, let me do that. So what I've been doing is working with the HBCU Business Deans, getting them in front of great global companies. Next slide. And strategic partners to say, these companies that are saying, hey, we can't find talent. How do we get you to stop saying that? So that's the goal of the HBCU Business Deans. 2 years ago, we rang the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and I had 60 HBCU deans on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange ringing the bell. It was a transformational event. So next slide. Just a couple of covers. This is Dorothy Height. Dorothy was a civil rights pioneer. Dorothy, when Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech, Dorothy was the only woman on the platform that day, and she's standing right behind him. She was like his mentor, and she always had this hat. So Dorothy, before she passed, and she passed a while back, we had the opportunity to feature her in on the magazine. So I had a chance to meet her, and we got to feature her on the magazine. Next slide. This was we did an edition for the NFL. This was actually one of the editions that actually sold out. This was actually put in the suites at the Super Bowl, but we actually did a thing on the 2010 census, and this was how we thought the census would actually change the election. So again, just another example of one of our magazines. Next slide. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to make the business case for diversity. So what is diversity, the business case? And again, this is from my perspective, the business case for why diversity works. When more companies realize the value of diversity and inclusion, I issue the following note of caution. There are situations within organizations where diversity and inclusion is of no help and becomes a hindrance. Next slide. When your company's computer systems are completely down, it's absolutely more effective to send in your network specialist than the summer interns, legal team, or public relations staff. Next slide. However, I'd like to make the following business case. Diversity and inclusion becomes more effective when the problems you encounter are complex. How many businesses do you frequent that have one style of lawnmower, one flavor of coffee, one steak on the menu, one flight per day, one size shoe, etc.? Next slide. When we look at the structure of successful businesses, it's usually the array of products, services, flavors, colors that attracts and keeps us as customers. It seems that only when we start to discuss diversity and inclusion with people, our employees or vendors, that the level of discomfort rises. The business case for diversity and inclusion has reached an increasingly more complex pace since Henry Ford spoke those now famous words: people can have the Model T in any color so long as it's black. Mr. Ford's competitors made him rethink this strategy. Has the desire for having the best ideas, the best people gone away? Is this approach overrated? To the contrary, one has to ask, when you start with one idea, one color, one way of doing things, one size fits all, are you providing the best competitive advantage for your company, your school, your customers, or your employees? My thought, as you expand your comfort zone and willingness to navigate into the complex arena with your employees, customers, and vendors, is that you may reach the same moment as Henry Ford when he realized a more effective way to move his company forward. Your products, customers, employees, and vendors should not all look the same. Where we are at Racing to Diversity, if you don't believe in the merits of diversity and inclusion, you're absolutely correct. If you don't believe in diversity, we're not the ones to stand in front of your building and yell at you. As a matter of fact, if you don't believe in diversity, it's like going to a restaurant. You know, we're not the folks that would sit at the counter and make you feed us. As a matter of fact, if you don't believe in diversity and you don't want me at your restaurant, I'm actually going to thank you, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Thank you very much. Here's a $100 tip. I really appreciate it. Thank you for saving me a hospital visit. Tell the boys in the back, whatever they put in the food, they can have it. They can have it. And I'm going to tell all my friends, you know, how you treated me here. So you don't have to ever worry about me coming back here again. And I'm going to spread the word. Now, the reverse is also true. If I have a wonderful time at your restaurant, you treat me as a valued guest, I'm going to tell all my friends, hey, you know what? My wife had a fabulous time at this establishment. So again, we're gonna, those that don't believe in diversity or don't even believe in me, it doesn't matter. That's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna sit there and sort of make you convert. We're not gonna cut your head off to make you a convert. The conversion rate is really low. Next slide. If you do believe in diversity, you're absolutely correct. And so at Racing to Diversity, if you believe in the merits, and again, you could start today and say, hey, you know what, we have to change. George Floyd changed a lot of people's aspects on what was going on in the country. Doesn't make you bad or good, but it changed the way people looked at things. And there's people out there that, guess what happened to George Floyd, they don't see a problem. I asked them, did you see a problem? No, they start talking about all these other things. I said, did you see a problem with what happened? Yes or no? Well, Antifa, no, yes or no? Did you see a problem? If you don't see a problem, doesn't make you a bad guy. But again, diversity is not for you. That's not what you're worked out to be. And if you're running a company, then maybe, you know, taking your company public or doing other things is more of a priority. that should be said, that should be voiced, and that should be part of what you do going forward. So if you don't believe, you're correct. If you do believe, you're correct. Next slide. So what I want to do is we sort of have a way we look at companies. We track about 600 companies. We've got a top 25 that we sort of really promote. A lot of those companies have no financial interest in us. They're not sponsors, but we think they're the best at what they do. So we track a top 25, we change each quarter, we track about 600 companies. So the way we look at companies, it's pretty transparent to us whether or not you believe in diversity. It doesn't make you good or bad, but we sort of take a look at, okay, does this company walk the talk? So if diversity is important to you, and this is what I do with the students, again, if you're looking to go work for someplace and diversity is important to you, or how they treat their employees is important, I've got a 10-minute guide to sort of walk you through, checking a company's diversity. So before you send in that resume, pull out your laptop. And again, I've got a 10-minute guide. I've listed 7 quick checks. And if you're short on time, just pick 4 of the 7 in no particular order. Next slide. Board of directors, quick check. Go take a look at the board. And again, all women, all men, just, all the faces the same. And again, first impression, it doesn't, don't judge a book by its cover, but first impression. If you don't think this matters, Zuckerberg, and Zuckerberg's in the news like every week. So Zuckerberg, when he first went public, he was at the exchange, and they said, Zuck, how come you don't have any women? Zuck said, well, I can't find any. Really? Okay, you got Facebook. You had, it was a dating service. You found women for the date, but okay, we'll let you go, Zuck. So again, part of that, he's saying that, but Sheryl Sandberg's right here. So part of that is, that excuse doesn't work. You got women running, governors. You got women running major institutions. So again, 50% of the planet is women. So again, this just a quick snapshot of the board of directors. Next slide. Senior executive, same thing. Is everybody from NC State? Is everybody from Harvard? I mean, so you get a look really quick, first impression. Take a look. And again, do you see diversity of just any type of women versus men? You start to see a trend pretty quickly. Okay. Next slide. Partnerships. At Racing to Diversity, we believe it's the company you keep. If you tell me, and again, this is, when I tell my, Austin's our baby, I've got 2 other children. You tell me who your friends are, I can tell you who you are. I just, so when people ask you for references, who are you hanging around? The same holds true for companies. Okay, so who hangs around this company? Who's on their website? Are they donating to causes? So again, it says a lot about them based on not only their press release, because they're saying, "Oh, we gave money to Black Lives Matters." Okay, that's great. So we check with Black Lives Matters. Do they say the same thing on their website? Is it just your press releases, or does the company match it? If we gave, and again, we're hearing that a lot now. And I think it's going to backfire on a lot of these companies. They're making these really wild announcements. We're giving $5 billion. Well, that's a lot of money. Okay, so who are you giving it to? Okay, is that just a press release? I mean, so a couple $100 million, especially with the HBCUs, that changes the landscape. So again, that commitment, you need to start to see some shovels. You need to start to see some activity in order for us people to say, okay, was that real or was that lip service? So again, affiliations with companies means a lot. Take a look at them. Search the website. Who are they? If it's a local company, are they doing things in the local community? You can see it. It's not something that has to be hid. If they're doing things, you will see it, whether or not they have a press release or not. Next slide. Supplier vendor programs. Do they have them? You'd be surprised. Do you even have a supplier diversity program? Again, supplier diversity has become very important now, given that a lot of companies were doing business overseas, and guess what? You can't do it. With COVID, it shut it down. So to diversify your suppliers was a smart move. Diversity, it becomes pretty smart when you start looking at, okay, what happens when you go single source? What happens when you single source for anything? What happens when you put all your money in one fund? What happens? So diversity, once you start to expand that into other things, you start to see the opportunity. Doesn't mean that you're going to love that person or go out on a date or what. Hey, but get another opinion in the room. Doesn't mean you like it. But again, that other opinion, they're saying that for a reason. Does that change your thought? Does it change the trajectory of what you're looking at? Next slide. Job fairs. Do they have job fairs? Do they show up at your school? And this is pretty tough for some of the smaller HBCUs because, again, a lot of they were in small. You got to drive down to Jackson, Mississippi and drive 4 hours west. Nobody's going. So what we were hoping to do is get some virtual platforms so we can get the companies there virtually, so you can get in front of these smart students that just are just in small towns, but brilliant kids. They're just as hardworking as anybody else. But does the company visit? So we're hoping to, with our platforms, to get companies that probably couldn't get to a lot of these smaller schools, because again, there's a lot of schools, but to get them in front of some of their best and brightest students on these campuses. Next slide. Active social media conversations, tweets, likes. Does the company walk the talk? So it's one thing to say, hey, we're diverse and all that. It's another thing. Okay, if I look at your Facebook page, or half the folks from your company saying that they hate the place. I mean, so it's not what we're saying. It's what is it a consistent message? Can the company walk the talk? Is it a one-way? And a lot of companies put out these press releases. It's a one-way conversation. My son was a very good athlete. So it wasn't just his dad. There's one thing to say your dad saying you're great. He's a great. No, what are the coaches or the local folks seeing that same talent? So again, is it a one-way conversation? And you hear a lot of one-way conversations from a lot of corporations, especially now. It's a one-way conversation. Is that same conversation being echoed by the community, which they're saying they're helping? Next slide. And our last one you got 2 minutes, you're in the elevator, you're going up. I just Google, I wish Google was around. I don't know, but I wish Google was around. This is just amazing. I talk to CEOs and, they tell me about, we're doing all this, we're doing all that. And it's like, okay, great. I put in the name of the company and I put in diversity and I hit search, boom, immediately. It comes up on the front page immediately. So if it says, hey, this place is getting sued, there's this racial, the first 10 pages are all this bad stuff. Like Zuckerberg, all the stuff you're in front of Congress. It's like every week, Zuck. So, and then the reverse is, okay, if you're doing these things, again, it pops up. Now, it doesn't mean it's not so, but it gives you a real good snapshot because you start to see a pattern. Do they walk the talk? Does this company respect these values, which I'm going to hold here? If I'm going to give 60, 70 hours a week, I want to come to a place that, at least they pronounce my name right, or, they're not, kicking me out of the door because something, some perceived thing. So again, if diversity is important to you, then these things matter. If it doesn't, hey, you go there, work like anybody else, and things will. If you work hard, usually things work out for you. So that's my next slide. That's my presentation for today. I wanted to leave time for questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Jackson? I'm going to just open up the chat and see if we have any. So I'll ask a couple of questions if you don't mind, Mr. Jackson.
Oh, absolutely.
So you interact with multiple generations because you're working with, sounds like you're working with students and students that are entering the workforce, and then also multiple companies. So what do you think is the one nugget that people can do to change their perceptions of diversity and inclusion right now across the board? Is there one thing? Is there a take home that would be the message to say, just try this and see how it works?
Yeah, it's, what I tell folks is that, diversity is not easy. It's tough. It's tough. It's great to be in a room with all your friends. Trust me. It's, that's, if you could run a business and all your friends, I mean, that'd be the ultimate thing. The thing is, outside of all your friends buying the product, you probably have to get other people to take a look at this thing, right? So one example, is, and again, just a recent example, and Austin, my son, came on board. He's been on board about 6 months. I had Austin, we went up to our job board folks are up in Connecticut. And it's a company called Your Membership. They're the largest job board operators in the world, operate over like 3,200 job boards. So we're doing some stuff on diversity and with the college students, et cetera. So we're sitting in the room with all the executives, and we're talking about, platforms and jobs and what should we doing with students, et cetera. And Austin, I guess, reached the point where he just, he knows his dad. He said, he just blurted out, he goes, "Dad, nobody does that." I mean, the whole room stopped because it was a bunch of, Steve, it was a bunch of old guys like me, right? Sitting in a room talking about what the students are doing. And it was actually funny when you stepped out, right? Because we knew exactly what students are doing, TikTok and all that. So he says, "Dad, nobody does that." So, they're about ready to sink a ton of money in this campaign. So the president said, "Austin, what do you mean nobody does this?" I said, "Dad, nobody does that. This is, this." So he said, "This is why, again, diversity of age. This is why we need to, break this thing up so that we're just not in this group think. We're just not, locked in. Everybody's sort of agreeing." So it was one of those instances. And the other example I use, I go into companies and they say, "Well, feels diversity." I said, "Well, okay. Well, diversity, it sounds like you guys have it all figured out, right? You got it all figured out. So, you're here and you're selling beer. You're selling beer and you want to sell a beer. You want to expand your brand and you want to sell it in Mexico, right?" I said, "Well, is anybody here from Mexico?" "Well, no." I said, "Well, that doesn't mean you're not going to sell the beer, but I think it would make sense to sort of, at least have somebody from Mexico, in the room when you're picking the name of the beer. Because sometimes, the cute little name you come up with the beer, that might be an insult. The reason why you're not selling this stuff might be an insult to the people in Mexico. And it's, have somebody taste it. The people are selling, and again, amazing. The people are selling women line of clothes, and you walk in and it's all men. And I said, you look around, you go, "Okay, does anybody not see this?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And there's hostility. It's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, it's just, silly me, silly me. But, don't you guys have wives? So if you don't want to bring anybody on your team, at least bring your wife in here, right? Or your daughter. So again, diversity, especially when you're in global markets, especially when you're expanding, it makes sense, not because, you got everything figured out, but even if you're like, everybody's, we're the smartest people in the world and we're all from Harvard, smartest people in the world. Okay, great. Well, good luck selling to the folks at Princeton. Good luck walking into the room at Princeton and telling them that you got it all figured out. Good luck going on the south side of Chicago. So again, why don't you get the folks that know that market in the room to help you sort of not step on every landmine that's in the planet? So to me, it makes sense. Other people, hey, you know what? We're not going to do it. We're going to do it this way. Okay. If you got the money behind it and you got the investors, go ahead and do it. It typically sort of backs up when you don't have other parties in there that have your best interest because they want to see you succeed.
That's great. Thank you. There's a couple of questions that have come through on the chat. The first one is, you mentioned that conversations revolving around diversity and inclusion are tough, difficult, and can be threatening. How do we change that paradigm?
It's diversity is, to me, diversity is the toughest task an organization can have. It's tough. What you guys are doing, and I say this, what you're doing, in the vet school. I mean, it's, you got to be really dedicated. You got to be really smart. And I say this it's like a rocket scientist. Okay. As a rocket scientist, it's tough, but if you get the formula right, the rocket will take off if you figure it out. The thing is, the tough thing is you've got a group. The second another person comes in, you're supposed to completely reboot. That's the tough thing. You brought in a new person, right? You say, well, this is the way we did it. You're supposed to reboot. The people that do that probably the most effective are coaches, especially the coaches at the college level, right? Next year, there's no, Austin played down at Clemson. Guess what? They could care less about I'm telling you, they could care less about what you did last year, right? So there's a new thing in, it's a complete reboot. That's tough, especially when you got all these things and factors. So you bring somebody new, you go into another country, you have to reboot. You know what I'm saying? You got to reboot. And the people that can reboot can bring in those things. And the tough thing is, and this is what I tell folks, there's, what was the guy's name? Stephen Hawking, right? If you look at Stephen, he's in this, he's mangled and, and he's whispering. And so, this guy, the people we're writing down his whispers. This is brilliant what this guy is saying, right? But if you got a hang up with him, who's losing? So part of that is that when you bring in diversity and what people don't understand, Steve, I don't have to like you. I don't have to marry. It's not a date. People say, well, I'm not going to there's people I work with that are brilliant. I can't stand them, Steve. I can't stand the guy. But guess what? If I'm on an operating room table, he's the dude. He's the guy, because I'm walking off, right? The other guy who's chatting me up, my brother lost his leg. He's one-leg Joe now, right? So part of that is you got to get past that comfort. It's not supposed to be comfortable. Diversity is not supposed to be comfortable. The thing is, other people have those views for a reason. They're not just, they've got that reason. So again, as long as it's not hostile and you're not pulling guns, why do you think this way? This is why I think this way. This is what we're trying to do. Here's the objective. And if you can get past the date and I got to like this guy, or, that's where the best that I've seen can navigate that and get, and especially, you get a bunch of bright people in a room, it's tough. I'm pretty sure you get a bunch of really smart people in a room. That's a tough room, Steve. That's a tough room, right? Now, if I want to take over the room and you got to do it my way, you know what happens with smart people? They're not hanging around here. So that's the diversity that I think is the tension that's part of it. And most people run from that. They want to have the kumbaya. That's not kumbaya. It's not. Right?
So another comment was, the tough part is not finding diverse talent. Maybe it's not even that tough recruiting diverse talent, but how do you ensure that your diverse members feel included and empowered if they are in the minority in the room?
That's the tough one. That's the tough one. You bring in a talented, and again, you bring in a talented quarterback, right? Bring in a talented quarterback, right? Whose job is it to make the kid feel comfortable, right? Not the fan, So part of that is that you've got a brilliant person, and again, that's the tough thing, because now that it would help to pronounce his name right. It's just little things, right? Hey, pronounce the guy's name right. He's got a wife and kids, just like you got a wife and kids. Hey, how your wife? Just as opposed to, well, I don't know what to say to the guy. Well, that's the problem. And just one of the things that kind of led me to, I had a CEO ask me after George Floyd, because I think the world changed after Floyd. Now there's other things that are happening. But I had a CEO call me and said, he said, Fields, that was terrible what I saw happen. And I said, yeah, it was. He said, I had no idea. And I said, well, that's happened in my world, for a long time. But he said, well, I don't know what to do. I said, well, have you talked to your employees? He goes, no, I don't feel comfortable. I said, no, there's no, you got to say something. So if you don't say something, it's you're saying something. So he said, what? I said, was it right or wrong? He said, it was wrong. Then I said, say that. Say that. Say it was wrong. Okay. He said, but I'm not a black guy. I said, of course you're not a black guy. I said you were a black guy. It's wrong, right? So say it's wrong. Say, again, how did it affect you? And then now go forward. What are you going to do? So it affected me. This is wrong. Because again, if you don't say anything, you've got black and brown and diverse employees working for you, right? They come home and the first thing that their family's going to ask them, did your boss say anything? He didn't say anything. Okay, all right. So now I'm gonna default to that you thought it was okay. He goes, no, it wasn't okay. You didn't say anything. All right. Now, if you thought it was okay, say it was okay. Either way, say it was okay. So at least everybody knows this is where you sort of stand, right? So part of that is that if and again, I said, just, tell your employees where you stand and then what you intend to do about it. And again, the employees, you're going to raise a weight off of their shoulders because now, hey, did your boss say anything? Yes, he did, because there's a bunch of companies out there, Steve, that didn't say anything.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I do think that, we hear the term pretty commonly now that silence is complicity. And that, I think you emphasize that point. Another comment is, and this is a related question and overlaps. Do you think there's things that organizations can specifically do to support a new underrepresented member of the community?
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's, I think the great example is the guy down at Wells Fargo. The guy down at Wells Fargo, and I know he probably thought that, but he came out and said it. I can't find diverse talent. Right? Now, outside of Atlanta, Charlotte is a pretty diverse place, right? So the thing is, that not only reflected him, that reflected every diverse executive that's in that building. That was a tough pill for everybody there, right? But it's also, to me, that was a learning moment, right? For those employees who care, to go up and say to him, what do you mean you can't find, what are you talking about, right? There's 40, 30 million people that are unemployed. Guess what? I guarantee you, Steve, guarantee you, his executives there have cousins or brothers or people, HBC people they've gone to school with that could come there and fulfill those roles the next day. So how do you now take that and make it a positive? And how do you turn that around where, guess what? I'm not looking for, but you know what? He doesn't say that again, number one. Number two, guess what? He becomes a model for where now in your own organization, or where are there diverse people hitting their goals and objectives in your organization right now? Because if they're not, everybody needs to go, right?
Right.
But if they are, then you've got folks that know your goals, they know your objectives, they know your mission. So can you find, just like birds of a feather flock together, do you have people that can help us meet these goals? Typically, most folks, especially if they've been working there, they know who to bring into that organization that's going to help and make the things go. So again, to me, does that mean that you're going to sit there and have cookouts with all you go to their church? No, I don't expect you to do that. Don't want you to do that, right? That's, to me, that's not being sincere, right? All right. So now, how do we do that and go forward? And again, you start to create those small wins where people even say, I don't hang out with my boss, but you know what? he's a decent guy. He treats me, now you start to build that relationship with your internal and external stakeholders.
Can you, so another comment's come in said that you mentioned a few mistakes that we can make, like, thinking we can't find diverse talent. Are there other common misperceptions or mistakes that we make when we're trying to reach out to a diverse community to bring into our community? Like, are there false assumptions? Are there mistakes we're making?
Yeah, the mistake is not even reaching out. That's the mistake. I can't find anybody because, number one, are you not looking? But again, to say there's no talent in a community, that's a pretty broad stroke there, right? What are your efforts been? And again, to me, the mistake is assuming that and then not doing it. I can't find anybody. Oh, okay. So what have you done? Who have you talked to? And that's where the diversity comes in, right?
Got it.
And I've gone into rooms, I said, well, who are you talking to? And you walk in the room and it's all white guys. I said, okay, and somebody will say, well, I got a black friend. I said, okay, you got one black? Okay, all right. So, did you talk to him? So again, who are you talking to? And usually who you're talking to reflects how that goes. So if you bring in other people, now the thing is now the diversity, if I bring somebody in, it's going to change the conversation. So if I had a conversation, I can't find anybody. The second I bring somebody new in, it's going to change. It has to change the conversation. So if I open up my pool of who I'm actually looking to and talking to, right? And the thing is down at, I think there's 15 HBCUs in North Carolina, 15.
Yes.
Right. In Charlotte, there's so right here. So again, if you were to go over to those schools and ask, would you get the same answer? Would they tell you, you know what, we're not gonna send anybody over to hire, we've got no kids, right? So by opening up that discussion, and that's where the discomfort comes in, because now there's sort of like, I'm afraid to ask. I'm afraid to seem vulnerable or something. Hey, I'm trying to figure out a problem. I need another bad example, just like your football team over there, right? Your coach over there, and again, that's why I love that the sports analogy, right? Like, and I'll just pick, I won't even pick Dabo. Let's pick Nick Saban. Let's pick Nick Saban. So he's got a wide receiver, and the wide receiver keeps running by the corner, running right by him. So he talks to the defensive guy. Well, I can't find anybody. Guess what's going to happen? What's going to happen to that coach?
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think? What do you think Belichick says to that guy? Do you think he'll have a nice long conversation with him? Right? Hey, he's going to find somebody who can't. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. He's going to find somebody who can. So when your HR folks come to you and say, I can't find anybody, we've got our diversity percentage is 5%. So it's 5%. It's not good, but at least you've got a number. So 5%. That means out of every 100 people you hire, 5 are diverse, right? And diversity is pretty broad now. I mean, so if you're at 5% and you're not even hitting that, you got a problem. So out of every 100, there's 5, right? So if you're saying, okay, we want to change that, like anything else, I got to measure that. So if I go from 5 to 7, right, I got to start tracking that. So again, who's hitting the 5, who's not hitting the 5, and you start to measure. And what happens, the people that probably surprise you, the people that aren't on your radar, there's somebody probably hitting 9%. There's probably somebody in your organization who's knocking this out of the box. Okay. So what happens to that person? Then what happens to the person that's got 0 and has had 0? So again, once you start to measure and bring those things in, then it becomes, okay, I need to find somebody who can find diverse talent, because obviously the people here can't. That's where you sort of go out and get that person to say, okay, who can find the diverse talent?
Okay, I'm going to try and be respectful of your time. There's a couple of more questions that have come in. Can you describe what diversity looks like in a minority-owned company as opposed to an established mega corporation?
Yeah, diversity looks the same. And I've walked into companies and it's all Black people, right? I've walked in and they go, this. I said, well, you know what, this, where's the diversity? Well, I'm diverse. No, where's your diversity? I walk into a company, it's all women. So again, diversity becomes, now the thing is, that may be good. If you're an all black company and you're selling to all black people, you know what, you may have something. this may be a good thing, right? But if you're selling to somebody, you see what I'm saying? If you're selling to somebody else, right? I've sold all the things I can to this segment. I need to sell to somebody else, right? And that's what I thought, when we went into NASCAR, that was our initial thought. We actually met with the old man, Bill France, and he was that movie Days of Thunder, that was him. Yeah. That was him. But he said, hey, he told us, he said, I have to diversify this sport in order for us to get to the NFL. I've tapped out every person that's at NASCAR. There's no more of this guy that I can get into this arena. So if I'm going to take this, and remember it was all regional, it was all in the South. Now he's out in Arizona. So he saw, and again, his friends, right? He wasn't any love-in or anything. So he said, in order for me to do this, right, I need to bring some folks in that look like you. Yeah. And he's looking at Dr. J. And even though he's Bill France, he knew who Dr. J was, right? Yeah. We walked out on the tarmac. Dale Earnhardt and these guys were walking up. Hey, Doc. I mean, this is Doctor. Just like this is Doc, right? So we saw it wasn't a racial thing. You know what I'm saying? Because people, they recognized who this guy was. So even though there was a bunch of flags and stuff, they weren't yelling that stuff at me. At least I didn't hear it. They saw this. Yeah. The thing is, we couldn't get a driver. It wasn't that.
Yeah, thank God for Bubba Wallace, right?
But look at Bubba. So Bubba, and guess what? Michael Jordan is now teamed with Bubba. Yeah, exactly. That's the way you change a sport. That's the way you change a brand. Now, Steve, is everybody going to be happy? No, right? Everybody's not going to happy, because there's people that say, hey, you're breaking tradition. You're doing. But again, if you want to expand this thing, right? How do you expand it? You don't expand it by bringing the same people in the room. Yeah, so again, it's for, you go into all Hispanic company. It's all Hispanic. That's great. The second you want to go something outside of that, diversity becomes very important. And now you just don't want to get any diverse person. You want to get the best and brightest at what they do. Right. So I need to get into the black community. I'm just not going to go grab a black guy. I want somebody that can get me to HBCUs. So I need to be that executive recruiter, just like the talent scout that finds these wide receivers, right, that can run down the field. Guess what? They're not just falling out of trees. Somebody identified that kid, right, and got them in front of the right folks. And that's where the coaches start to show up and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it's more, how you're addressing your business and how you're looking to grow, and whether or not talent, because again, I think everybody in your program is a talent. So does talent wants to be at the best, they want to be at the best vet program, right?
That's perfect. So we're going to close with one last question. And then I think we're going to ask everybody to stay on and turn on their videos so we can get a screenshot to show everybody that was involved. But the last question is, and this is a tough one, how do you address situations where someone has been presumed to be hired primarily because of their race?
That usually shakes itself out. If you're the thing is, if I'm bringing somebody in that is just there just to, they're not productive, they're not doing, if I got a task to do, right? Whatever that task is, I want the best person doing it. Now, that doesn't mean I got to like the person. And again, take all that stuff out. But if I'm just bringing people in, right, and it's a revolving door, right? Well, who am I holding accountable for that? Who's training that? You see what I'm saying? So where did you find this person, right? And it's just, I'll go back to the Nick Saban thing, right? Oh, yeah, I just need a Spanish guy on the team, right? So you run them out there with Trevor Lawrence and those guys, you're going to find out real quick whether or not you're on this field.
Yeah.
So let's find the right people. Let's train them. And the thing is, if you're bringing folks in, I'm going to hold that person accountable. All right.
That's great.
And
Well, I'd like to thank you for your time. This has been enlightening, and I think we're all trying to be on the same page here. And your insight is really valued. And you're just to let everybody know, you're in the neighborhood, so don't be a stranger. Like, you're around the corner.
Right around the corner.
Right around the corner in Cary.
So, yeah.
So I think if everybody doesn't mind turning on their cameras for a second, so we can actually see people, I think our marketing and communication people are going to get a screenshot for us.
Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you guys.
Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. And Dr. Candy, I mean, this has been fun. I enjoy this. Any way I can help you guys. I got a job board, so we've got companies looking for talent. I know you guys are gifted, and I don't have any animals to bring to you guys. But if I did, you guys would be the group. But I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you. Send me that screenshot. I'm going to put this up on my pages.
Yeah, tell Austin.
If everyone would like to smile really quick, I will get the screenshot. So 1, 2, 3, and another one. 1, 2, 3. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Tell Austin hello for us.
We will.